to be made well. It's a question, it's a choice, right? So there's another choice that we have. So disability, we all have some kind of areas that we struggle, whether it's physical or psychological, an area of weakness that we struggle. But when these weaknesses become significant enough to impact our daily living, that is when our weaknesses become an impairment or a disability, okay? So again, I'm a credentialed school psychologist working in a school setting, primarily responsible for ensuring that public schools comply with federal law, which is the Individual with Disability Education Act, or we call it IDEA, which requires students with disabilities to receive appropriate academic services so they can access their education. So basically, I conduct a lot of comprehensive psychological evaluation to identify their cognitive processing deficits and to determine whether the student meets the criteria and qualify for those services, okay? So just a disclaimer, I'm not here to tell you what's the solution because these are basically genetical disorder, and most of the time there's no cure to it. There are times I have heard people say they outgrow the disability or they find ways to kind of compensate their area of weakness. I'm not here to tell you what to do, but I'm more of a bringing awareness, because sometimes when we have weakness and we don't know about it, guess what? You bring that disability to adulthood. And so, you know, like students with, a child with ADHD, right? Never diagnosed or never know about it. And guess what? The same behavior, he brings it to adulthood and has those characteristics, right? So it's important that we are aware of it because there are resources available, supports available that you can kind of like help with your daily living, right? Okay, let's see here. I wanted to say this real quick because in any career that you all have, that I have, it's important that we find a purpose, right? And I was so blessed when I found out how my career, my profession kind of parallels with Christ. So like I said, I advocate for individuals with disabilities to access their education, right? So this became even more meaningful when I understand, or when I realize how it parallels with the way Christ advocates for us beings who cannot access God's glory on our own, right, or the goodness of God. So let's see here. So I work with a beautiful multidisciplinary team members. They're all specialized in different areas. We all come together and work for a common goal, which is student success. And in my team, I work as a team leader, and my team includes many, many important people. So there are general education teachers, education specialists, speech and language pathologists, I have occupational therapists, I have physical therapists, I have registered nurses, also LVNs, and also I do have board certified behavior analysts, or we call it BCBA, and under that comes behavior specialist. And I also have school counselors and social workers. So all of these are my amazing team members. That's not a picture, but just a visual of it. In my team, usually we have like 20 or 30 people together in a team meeting, and yeah, so that's how we work together. So what we do as a team is we build an academic framework of support system or services that will best fit the student's need. So we create like a scaffolding of services that will help students, you know, to do better. So before we move on to whether a child has a disability, I checked for exclusionary factors, or determining whether it is a learning disability or not, or is it something influenced by external factors, right? So something to do list before you you kind of like say, okay, the child may have a disability. So what I would do is make sure the students' hearing and testing tests are done, because it's very important that a child's vision and hearing tests are done before the school starts. Because in a classroom, if they're not able to see the whiteboard, they might write down a different number, right? And we might misdiagnose, say, oh, what is going on there? So it's important that we do these prerequisites, okay? So make sure your child get all these things done before his or her school year starts. The next thing is make sure your child has a good attendance, because research shows that missing just 2 days a month from TK to 8th grade results in an entire year lost of learning by the time the child reaches a high school. So so let me repeat that again. Missing just 2 days a month from TK to 8th grade results in an entire year lost of learning by the time the child reaches high school. So you see the importance of attendance, because you're not just building those academic skills, but also you're building that social connection with other students, right? If you're not attending school, then you're most likely to be kind of like aloof because you don't have that social connection, and also you might struggle with that classroom expectations and rules, right? So we also check for limited exposure to school. This is very common with students that are homeschooled because they use non-traditional curriculum, and when they come to public school, they kind of like stay behind, and they tend to struggle with social skills, and that's something that I have observed as a pattern consistently. So see, are they exposed to adequate curriculum, or are they using modified or different curriculum, right? Let's see, next one is. And also look for environmental factors at home and in the school. Try to set up an environment that's built for success, like a quiet place to study, right? Those basic needs are met. And with this, I just wanted to show something. So in order for a child to be successful, we need all these layers of pyramid, especially physiological needs. Whenever a child comes to me, I make sure the student had breakfast, because if the student's hungry, the student's not going to pay attention to you. If your child is hungry, this child is not going to listen to you, right? There'll be tantrums and whatnot. Second, most important, safety, right? The child needs to feel that he or she is safe, right? Financially, kind of like protected in the sense, provided, I should say, financially stable and provided. And there's like a stability in the family. Love and belonging. Social community, friendship, something that she can relate to at home or in the school. Okay, all these things builds the students' self-esteem or self-confidence. And when all these things are met, it helps them with their progress to meet the best that they can be, right? To become the most that one can be, which is called self-actualization. Okay, so I want you guys to keep that in mind as a parent, that all these areas need to be met, and we need to make sure the child is meeting or receiving all this. Okay. Next one is, sorry, I'm talking a lot. I need to kind of quiet down, take a break. So for temporary, next one is temporary crisis. Is there a crisis at home? Maybe a family going through divorce that can impact their mental health wellness. They may not be able to focus in their schoolwork when they are like stressed out about the relationship conflict going on between the parents, right? Or is there frequent transitions, frequently moving from one school to another, right? Maybe 3 times in one school year. That will really impact their learning, right? And the next one is cultural linguistic factors, right? Students coming from out of states may have trouble acculturating or understanding the language. So that doesn't necessarily determine the disability. It's just an external factor, right? Okay, next one is behavior, right? Does the student display functional behavior problems, which are reinforced by attention-seeking behavior, escape from the task, or because they want to access something that they like, or is it just like a sensory need, right? So one can refuse to do work because, okay, let's see, how about this? One has the skills but may refuse to do work, right? So for example, a student is goofy in the classroom, right? Why? Because the student's getting all this attention, right? So which reinforces the student's behavior. So it's important that those behavior problems, all these external factors are addressed, okay? Let's see. I think we're making progress. All right, so before I go on to explain what is a cognitive processing or processes, I want you to look at, it's kind of like a bell curve. Imagine all those people standing there, they're like children. So let's select an age, a 10-year-old, maybe Maddie, right? So majority of the 10 years are performing in the range between 90 to 110. So where does it say average? That's 90 to 110. So if Maddie's overall cognitive IQ is within that range, then it's within average. But if it is lower than that, then of course, lower than 90, then it's below average. Above 110, it's above average, okay? So so before I say that, and if you happen to come across a psychologist estimating your overall cognitive ability and you have a cognitive IQ score that's lower than 90, don't be discouraged. And I say that because even if you're within below average, Paul says in 1 Corinthians 1:26, brothers and sisters, think of what you were when you were called. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Relative to most humans, we were not that wise. Many of you were not influential. Not many of you were of noble birth, but God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise, and God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. So if you're weak, God is going to use you, right, to manifest God's glory, and provided you are willing to be used by God. You're willing to carry your cross and follow him, okay? So for the cognitive, for the IQ, we need to do certain testing as a school psychologist. So what we look is, the first one, we check their overall vocabulary knowledge, the information that they have gathered throughout their lifetime, right? From their surrounding, from their culture, from their community. And students with this average within these skills, they will be able to compare and contrast between two different concepts, or they will be able to provide you with a definition. They will understand language riddles. And students who are English learners, they tend to struggle in this area. And again, it's not necessarily a processing deficit, but more of a environmental factor or external factor. But students that are born within the culture and they struggle with all this, they will struggle with reading comprehension, okay? So that's one of the first processes that we checked. The next one is we check their ability to use quantitative and qualitative reasoning to solve a novel task. So what I would ask them is show them a novel problem, right? A problem that they have never solved before. And then come up with a solution. So basically, like, could you classify these objects into groups based on the context they're related, right? Or could you look at this math problem, understand the pattern, and come up with a solution, right? And from what I see, students that struggle in this process, they tend to struggle in the classroom. So, because they struggle with understanding the concept, right? In the classroom, when everyone is reading, they'll be doing something else, right? But students that perform really good in this process, when they see everyone working on their homework, they'll take out their book and work on their homework. So they take cues from their classmates, okay? Let's see here. And also, students that struggle with this, like I said, they struggle with novel tasks. For example, we are coming from Walmart to our small town here, but let's say there's a traffic jam. Now you have to take a new route, right? So you have to come up with new ways to reach home, right? So they will struggle to find a new ways to solve the problem, okay? And they will struggle with mathematics calculation. They will struggle with problem-solving skills, word problem-solving skills specifically, word problem-solving. And sentence composition, essay writing, they will need like graphic organizer to kind of like flow their thoughts and then write it down. They will have delayed math fluency and also poor writing skills, okay? The next one, I try to assess their long-term, their ability to learn a concept and then retrieve it after maybe an hour, a day, or maybe after 1 week. So long-term storage and retrieval. This one, it's very common for students with orthographic processing issue, which is associating a name with a label, right? A, and this picture of an A, right, associating with them. They struggle to do that. And this is very common when you have very poor short-term memory, which I will explain right now, okay? The next one is short-term memory, or working memory, ability to recall immediate information. Students with ADHD, they tend to struggle in this area because they are easily distracted. So if I'm like giving you immediate information, they may have trouble recalling that information right away. So it can be like phone number. You have to repeat it again and again, okay? And students with this, they need a lot of repetition in the classroom and even at home. They struggle with multiple step directions. You have to give them very precise, short direction. At home, if you say like, wash the plates, clear your table, sweep the floor, take out the trash, they're not going to remember all of them. It has to be one by one, okay? And I would recommend using visual prompts, visual cues, okay? First do this, second, third, that helps them a lot. Next one is visual processing. This one I checked if they're visual learners. And so what I would ask them to do is I would place like a 3D blocks and then look at the structure and build a structure using those blocks. So students that struggle in this area, they tend to struggle with visual motor coordination. They will struggle writing within the lines. They will struggle copying information from the whiteboard. And they will have difficulty understanding three-dimensional concept, okay? So they may not necessarily be a hands-on learner. And they also struggle with mathematical problems, difficulty understanding graphs, charts, you know. And it's interesting, people that struggle in this area, they have difficulty parking within the lines. So, yeah. Or in the garage, parking your car in the garage. The next one is I check their phonological processing. How well they can process phonological information. Can they blend, segment sound, or are they an auditory learner? So all these areas I check. So students, they tend to struggle in this, students that struggle in this area, they tend to have dyslexia. They will have difficulty associating a symbol with the alphabet, difficulty associating letters with their sounds, and then blending the sounds to form a word, and has trouble reading the sentence and struggles with comprehension. So it's like on and on, it's a pattern, right? So because of these struggles, the student will need to read again in order to comprehend the question or the paragraph that he or she just read. By doing so, they are running out of time. And, oh, sorry, I got carried away. Thank you. So, yeah, I'm in one of those. The attention is related to short-term memory, and then memory, there you go, reasoning, perception, language. So what I was saying was, let's see, because they struggle to understand what they just read, they need to read again, right? Which lead to frustration, and ultimately they will just give up reading. Okay? And they will say, I don't want to read. I don't want to read. Could you read for me? Yeah. And then students, the next area, processing area that I check is their processing speed. How quickly they can process a simple information, process a simple task. So think of a factory worker packaging an item. Those are simple tasks, right? Repeat again, do it. But students with ADHD, they're like, no, I'm done. They will rush through and just walk away. Same thing with writing. Maybe do a homework halfway and just kind of walk away. So they tend to struggle in their processing speed. They need that patience to kind of sit down and finish their work, check the detail, see if there's any error. Okay? So those are like 7 different cognitive processes, and then overall, we estimate their full-scale IQ and see how is it impacting their academic achievements, right? So I've explained to you what this is. Oh, let's see. Next one is, let's talk about autism. Okay? It's a neurodevelopmental disorder that affects how a person interacts, communicates, and learns in school. Okay? It usually appears early in the childhood, and then they are presented in a broad spectrum. So some may have some may be high functioning, but expressively or in their communication very low. Social skills can be a little bit delayed. They will have difficulty maintaining eye contact, things like that. But I will explain a little bit more detail now. So I checked their functional communication, which includes verbal, expressive, and nonverbal. Are they able to utilize spoken communication in a structured and conventional way? Are they scripting? Means repeating phrases that they heard from someone, somewhere. Are they able to use nonverbal gestures to communicate or to ask what their needs are. Are they using their peripherals to look at their environment? Okay. And there are many more, but these are the few things that I can come out with. And most of the time, they tend to have splinter skills in other cognitive processing areas, like they're very good visual processors or good visual learners, and they have a good short-term memory. Because most of the time, whenever I say something to a child with autism, they tend to repeat back that to me. That's very cute. So sometimes I call them, they are the mirror of who you are at home and in the school, right? So, and they're very sweet, because their minds, they are not corrupted as most people around us. Their minds are very naive, and they're very straightforward, okay? They don't have any conspiracy or like cunning or conniving attitude. They are very simple. Yeah. So like I said, they struggle with social interaction. They have difficulty making eye contact, and then they have difficulty understanding body language. When you're trying to stay away from them, they might come closer to you, right? They will struggle with context-related interactions. And they will struggle to show appropriate emotional response in a social situation, right? Meaning like if you're crying because something bad happened to you, they may not necessarily understand that or relate to it. And as a result, they tend to struggle to maintain that social relationship with others. And also not just maintain, but initiate that social relationship with others. They do struggle understanding an age-appropriate joke, and sometimes they may take it literally too, okay? So overall, they have difficulty reciprocating with friends and adults. And students with autism, they do demonstrate repetitive or stereotype behaviors, which include hand flapping, spinning, stimming, which is actually a self-soothing behavior. They will repeat scripted words, phrases, and they like to jump a lot of vestibular movements, like rocking in the chair, spinning, swinging. These are their proprioceptive seeking behaviors, okay? And they like deep pressure, because again, that's that sensory thing, right? Then they can be very sensitive to other things. I'll explain more now. The next one is they will have difficulty tolerating to changes in routine. So if you have set up a routine, which is dinner, bathe, and then bath time, and then story time, then let's say the next day something happens and you have to break that routine, they will be very upset. They're very much routine-oriented, okay? Routine-oriented. So in the school, it's very common, like when they are having like a regular classroom routine and there's like a safety drills, and they get very upset. So it's important that we provide them support as they need during that moment. They do have like a noise canceling headphones, things like that, and I'll explain more. And they do have sensory sensitivity or preferences, or they tend to react to certain sensory experiences. So it can be like touch or sound, the lighting, smell, food texture. So like I said, we use like noise canceling headphones, deep pressure, or heavy weighted blanket, which is like a jacket or a blanket that kind of like helps them feel that sensory pressure that they are craving for their sensory processing input, okay? Let's see here. And they do have attention problems. because they're having difficulty shifting focus from one task to another. So when you're calling Maddie, she may not necessarily answer you because her mind is fully focused on the task that she's interested. Okay? So it doesn't necessarily mean the student has ADHD or ADD. It's more of having difficulty that fixated focus with that one particular task. Okay? And I just want to let you know there are supports and services available. There are services in Alta Regional. It's one of the a company or whatever. They provide services for students with autism and any behavior problems too, but specifically autism. And then there are ABA therapy, which is like applied behavior analysis therapy, which is for students with extreme behavior problems. And there is Family Soup. These are advocates to help parents and children with autism or any other needs. Okay. And when I was before I explain all this, I was thinking like, I don't want to talk about special needs or like special education. Because whenever there's a presenter, the presenter is not going to talk about the hospital, right? They're going to talk about, you might have these issues, you may want to reach out for help. So I don't want you guys to kind of like think too much about like special needs. There are other services besides special needs that you can reach out and then you can receive help from, okay? Okay, so the next one is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also known as ADHD. It is characterized by persistent inattentiveness, heightened alertness to environmental stimuli. So let me go a little bit detailed. Heightened alertness to environmental stimuli is like when a child, say Maddie is working on the assigned task, and let's say a person just passed by her. She immediately turns. So easily distracted by environmental stimuli. Okay. And then hyperactivity or overactive behavior. They struggle to sit down. They had to be constantly like moving. Restlessness. And impulsivity, core symptoms of ADHD. So all this characteristic interferes with their daily functioning. So impulsivity, mostly risk-taking behaviors. Let's see here. So like I've said, having difficulty sitting still for 10 minutes to complete a task, frequently distracted, requires repetition again, tend to take a risk, tend to do risky behaviors. Let's see, rushes through a task, does not check for errors, has difficulty pausing before speaking or before acting, okay? Leading to blurting out comments, emotional outbursts, and then rushing into decisions. So most of the time, it's important that we get their attention first, have them look at you, and give the direction, okay? Oh, yeah. So next one is intellectual disability. This one, again, it's a neurodevelopmental disorder where a child or a person's intellectual functioning is below average with significantly low adaptive functioning skills, okay? This is very common with children with Down syndrome It's a genetic condition due to an extra chromosome, of course, instead of the two, okay? Most of the time, their full-scale IQ are very low. So if I go back there, it's sometimes below average or well below average, somewhere between 70s or 60s, sometimes even 40s, okay? And so what I'm looking is not just their estimated full-scale IQ, but also I'm checking their overall adaptive functioning behavior, whether it's at home or in the school. So I check their functional communication again. I check their pre-academic skills. Are they performing within the level they're expected to, right? If they're a third grader, are they performing at that level, or are they performing at kindergarten or preschooler level, right? So are they able to follow simple step directions, or do they need a lot of prompting, hand-on-hand prompting? How are they able to initiate and maintain social relationships with others? Because again, in school, we're not just looking at academic, and I would suggest you as a parent not just to look in their academics, but also their social well-being, okay? And also I check their practical skills. Are they able to navigate independently in the school setting or at home in the neighborhood as expected? Are they able to perform their daily chores, like organizing their personal belongings? Are they able to follow general safety rules? Do they need help with daily personal self-care tasks? So sometimes students with intellectual disability, they will have like low IQ, but high adaptive skills. So I would recommend parents who are listening to this video to focus on those strengths, not necessarily on those IQ scores, okay? Because our goal is to help them become independent and be successful the best they can be in the community, okay? They do need extra time to complete an assigned task. Like I said, they need a lot of hand-on-hand prompting and visual prompts. And most of the time, they do need modified curriculum. Okay, so like I said, our goal is to help them function independently as far as possible. So with this, reminds me of the story from the Bible. It's in Luke chapter 5, where, sometimes we need direct support from others, friends, teachers, parents, caregivers. Just like these friends here, who helped a paralyzed friend by lowering him through a roof to be healed by Jesus, right? To access that goodness of God in order to be healed, okay? So there are resources, there are services available in the community, in the school. If you think you know someone, or if you know you might be struggling in that area, I want you to self-evaluate, and I would also recommend you to reach out to your primary care provider and share your concerns, right? But also I want to say something. Just because a child has a medical diagnosis does not necessarily mean that the child will qualify for these services in the school setting. They need to be assessed by psychologist and the team, okay, to see where they are and what areas do they need. So, but it's a good place to start. Reach out to your primary care provider, and then we can start from there. All right, I think that's about it. And I wanted to finish fast so that we all can get to go home on this hot afternoon day, but a blessed Sabbath day. Yeah, thank you all. You have any questions? So early diagnosis is good because early diagnosis is related to early intervention. So the question was like early diagnosis supports with their adult transition into adulthood. Of course, a lot. And that's why, like I said, reach out to your care provider, tell them your concerns, because we're not just looking for physical wellness, we're looking for academic success, social interaction success, right? And all these communication skills, so. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And most of the time, because of the higher awareness, I think, than years ago, children are immediately identified because there are early academic support, like Head Start and all. Yeah, so they're easily identified in the sense like they're quickly identified, I should say, rather, and they are provided support as needed. Again, appropriate support. Okay, any questions?
What percentage the children grow out of this? What percentage of the children grow out of this illness and be able to?
Yeah, very good question. So, in any randomly given population, majority of the time, 10 to 20% of that given population will have disability. And so, outgrowing out of the disability might be possible. Again, it's a genetic disorder, right? I've heard many successful stories of a girl with Down syndrome working very successfully in the aviation industry or many other things. So our goal is not necessarily focus on the label, but more so like how are they able to accomplish their daily tasks, their daily demands, their daily lifestyle. Yeah, needs. Yeah. So outgrowing, I have heard about students with autism. Initially, they were nonverbal, then eventually they become more verbal. So again, it has to do with maturity, their age, because of course their communication is delayed, unlike their age, right? There's another thing called selective mutism, or SM, which mostly has to do with anxiety and stress-related thing, and maybe I'll discuss another time. But that is totally different from autism. Okay, but yeah, I hope that answers your question, Pastor.
My follow-up question then is, for those who grow out of it,
Mm-hmm.
and they're able to have relatively normal life like you have, okay? What will be the possibility? Well, there's always a possibility. What percentage do they, when they have family, they pass that gene on to next generations? What percentage will pass on to that?
Very highly likely. Very highly likely. Which is why when I am doing a comprehensive psychological evaluation, I check their background, their medical history. I see if they have family history of any, all these mental or psychological disorders.
You know, sometimes when a child behavior, it's easy for us to see it right away. But then sometimes it's quite hard, And then normally boys, they, how develop, their speaking skill later than girl. So how do we know, day in and day out, how do we, unless we bring the child to the doctor or something, but at home sometimes it's quite hard to, diagnose that behavior.
Okay. So how do we know? Are you asking about specifically a specific disorder or?
Yeah, like autism, you know, sometimes it's really a mild cases and then the parent can miss it.
Yes. So like I said, it's a spectrum. So it's like mild, moderate, and severe. So like I said, it can be high functioning with very delayed communication, or it can be low functioning and all those delayed communication, cognitive ability. And they are all neurodevelopmental disorders, so they tend to overlap too, just FYI, okay? Yeah, but yeah. Which is the reason why it's important that we check mark the external factors that way we can rule out disability, right? Let's say a child is homeschooled, right? And then let's say fewer relatives or family members, right? And obviously there will be a gap with their social skills, right? Because the parents there's a generational gap, right? So it's important that even when you're homeschooling the child, you give opportunities for the child to experience social interaction. Yeah, because when the child is by herself at home, then you might suspect, why is the child not interacting with us? She might not be interested to talk to you. She might not be even motivated to have a conversation. So yeah, there's this something called, like I said, you know, mild, moderate, and severe. And if you have any concerns, reach out to that school, reach out to your primary care provider, and because they can kind of like separate, you know, your concerns. Like, is it disability or is it something the child is doing intentionally?
My son, since he was born, he was preemie.
Mm.
And then we took him to the doctor, and the doctor said, he's okay, nothing wrong with him. But then at the time, he did not speak at all until like 2 years old, he still not really speak.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was so worried, I called the county 1 week before the lady showed up for the evaluation. He speaks so much.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's hard to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, no child is similar. They have different characteristics. It's just like we're trying to find ways to best fit that child's need, right? Because like my child will be different than yours, right? Based on the culture, their faith, their brought up, their environment, their community, things like that. So yeah, a lot of factors, but always reach out to the experts, yeah.
Yes, we've had a situation where my son he didn't talk hardly at all when he was a child.
Mm-hmm.
And even today he doesn't talk much, but he can articulate himself very well. And he's very high functioning, which is fascinating because we didn't have the outlets at that time, I don't think, to deal with this situation on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
But he has done well, and he's still doing okay, you know, and he's very,
Yes.
he's just good. He's great in art,
Mm-hmm.
and he thinks of things that you would never even,
Mm-hmm.
anyone would not even think of, but he made it through school, so.
Yes, awesome. Yay. Yeah. I know there are so many other areas of disability that is part of my career, part of my job, what I do, my bread and butter. But I cannot cover all of them in this presentation, and I'm trying to like narrow them down as much as I could. But yeah, there are so many other disabilities, of course, like cerebral palsy, orthopedic impairment, and then let's see here. Of course, speech will help with that area too. Speech and language impairment. And so many other, right now I'm not able to recollect, but yeah. Maybe I'll find time in the future to talk more about it. Yeah, absolutely.
This program especially for children, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
never mind.
Yeah. But if you have questions, let me know. Yeah.
Didn't you say something about going to the doctor, but that's for the child to figure out why, say they have a problem expressing or telling you something back that they heard that you told them or something like that? So that would they go to your doctor, and then they refer you over to somebody else, to a psychologist or whatever, right?
What was the question again?
Say your child can't repeat what you told them, or repeat something that they need to tell somebody else, and it's hard for them to remember it all, but the first part of it, but the rest of it they can't remember. So that child, you take it to your doctor, and then they refer you to a psychologist?
Okay, so I don't want you to take one observation and say, oh, he or she cannot repeat what I just said. It has to be, multiple observations. And there are so many factors, again, into it. It can be behavior, like I said, maybe the child is not motivated to talk to you, or maybe the child is looking at the TV or want to go hang out with friends. So there are so many factors into it, but if you think your child has inattentiveness and it's been frequently exhibited or demonstrated, I would recommend you to reach out to your primary care provider or just share your concerns with other experts. Does that answer your question?
Currently, how many % that having the symptom of autism in the U.S., the population?
I don't have the data with me right now, but there has been a very high diagnosis of it. Again, it can be because of that tools that we have, great tools that we have, and there's this early diagnosis, okay?
Is it increasing?
Is it? Yes, it is increasing. And again, it can be because we have great tools to early identify the child as young as 3 years old, as young as, 4, kindergarten, preschooler. Yeah, it's increasing.
Is it because the impact of the environment, or how is it the sickness?
Is it because? So it's a genetic neurodevelopmental disorder where they are super sensitive to sensory input. They have difficulty processing their sensory input, so they can be overly reactive to certain sensory experiences, or they can prefer certain sensory things. So it can be touch, or it can be sound, it can be noise, things like that. So some might prefer certain music, some might prefer a quiet environment, some might not like the texture of broccoli. It's just, the sensory. And some might only choose to eat macaroni, cheese, or mashed potato. Some might prefer colorful things. Again, that's sensory, right? So some might prefer to, so some might overreact when they hear loud noises, which is why they need to wear that headphones. And that helps a lot. And it's not every time, but most of the time that helps a lot. Yeah. So, yeah. So I don't think it's environment.
So it's mutation.
Yeah, it has to do with the gene from the
And
parents.
it's genetic, yeah. But sometimes the parents, they look normal, they behave normal, but they have.
Yeah, and it can be, there are so many factors into it. They say older moms, they tend to struggle with this. They tend to, when they have children at an older age. I'm not sure. in the sense like there's so many factors contributing to autism. But yeah, that's one of them.
Food does have a factor in the way they learn that if that food or that color or dye in the food, anything like that, that also has a contribution to their, they might be able to process certain, like gluten or something in the food, you know. That also has an effect on children, their food, right?
And which is why for students with hyperactivity, we tend to recommend them running, like maybe the track before the classroom starts. That way it cuts down their energy level and they're able to sit still and focus.
Well, if that was me, I'd be
And-
fall asleep when I got done. I couldn't make it.
And
Just-
also cut down with the sugar intake,
Yeah,
breakfast and things
right.
like that. Because if they come with like tons of maple syrup and waffle early morning breakfast in the classroom, they're going to act out. So
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, that'll do her.
Okay, I think that's it for the day.
All right.
Sister
Awesome.
Ursula,
Thank you
thank you.
all.
Let's all bow our heads, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this information that you've been able to bless us with. Father, we ask you to allow us to maintain the information and take it to our friends and families so that they too can start researching these types of things to help their children or family members who may have some of the symptoms and some of the observations that we've been talking about here. Thank you, Lord, for this wonderful Sabbath. We ask you to be with us for the rest of the Sabbath so that we will enjoy it and just keep fellowshipping with our friends and family. We ask you and thank you so much, Father. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Marceline, for presenting. Thank you for coming today. Many things that I got, but two things that I got is one. First is from what Tony said. What you learn here, you could be an assistant to others. And secondly, there are time for direct assistance or direct intervention, that's her word. So that way, the child will have all opportunity that he or she can to be successful. So I really like that. Okay.